Hey YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I am your host AJ, and in today's episode, I'm gonna be walking you through exactly how to launch your short-term rental on Airbnb. But before we get into that, I am giving away all of this content totally free. So if you could hit that like button for me for the YouTube algorithm, get this information out there. I wanna help as many people as I possibly can. It helps so much. If you could do that for me, I would be forever grateful. And by the way, we just passed 400 subscribers and I'm totally flabbergasted by that. Thank you so much for the support. Keep it coming. I'm gonna continue to make content like this. Now, before we get into this list, there's a couple of caveats that I wanted to call out. This list starts after you've already done your research and after you've already purchased your property. There's a lot of other steps and a lot of different videos that I have on this channel, but this particular process starts only after you've closed on your property. Okay, so this checklist is exactly what I use when I'm starting to launch a new short-term rental. If you follow these steps, you are more than likely going to have a successful launch. Granted that you've done all of the steps properly up until this point. So let's get into step number one, which is pretty obvious. It's all about prepping your space. So when we're thinking about prepping our space, where do we want our furniture? What are those details that we want to add? What are some of those things that we need to make sure that we tell our photographer to focus on when we're actually going to be taking those photos? So prepping your space is a really important piece of this, because if you're prepping your space well, your photos are gonna come out well, and it's ultimately going to lead to more bookings. So whatever that big thing that you're advertising within your listing, your hot tub, your pool, the view, a sauna, make sure that you have an idea of how you want that space to look on your photos, and then adapt the space prior to your photographer getting there. Which leads us to step number two, which is booking your photographer. And when I say booking your photographer, that means getting a professional photographer done. I'm going to continue to say this because I continue to see Airbnbs all over the place with crappy photos. And consequently, they are not getting booked as much as Airbnbs who have good professional photos. When you're thinking about a professional photographer, I always suggest starting with bark.com. Bark.com has a ton of photographers for you to use, and there's more than likely someone in your area who can get the job done. Now let's work on step three, which is your description. Getting your description all written out, making sure that it is easy to read, but also tells a story about what type of experience that you're offering for your guests. So I really suggest that on every single piece of information within that listing, you make sure that you are filling that out properly. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty, which starts with step number 4, and that is all about planning your launch date. And when you think about planning your launch date, you need to make sure that you give yourself enough time to get your listing as set up as possible. When you go live, Airbnb is going to give your listing a boost. It wants to figure out, and the algorithm wants to figure out, is this a good listing, or is this just a listing that I really don't want to push traffic to? Now, having a listing that is completely ready is going to prove to Airbnb that they should continue to send you traffic. Now, the second part of part 4 is making sure that you only allow a certain amount of availability from that launch date for the next 4 to 6 weeks. So those 30 to 45 days after that launch date, you wanna keep open, and here's why. You're going to be giving discounts, your pricing is gonna be much lower, and you wanna make sure that it's much lower, which is in a separate step, to make sure that you get bookings. Now, once you start to get those bookings within those first 30 to 40 days that this listing goes live, that's going to prove to Airbnb that yes, oh, this place is basically booked full. Once that happens, then you start to open up the rest of your listing dates so that you can continue to get booked. So make sure that when you're planning that launch date, you take those 30 to 40 days from that beginning date. The rest you close down until you start to get some bookings, and then you open that up down the road. This is going to push the traffic that Airbnb is going to be sending you for those particular dates when guests are looking for which Airbnb am I actually going to be choosing. It might seem a little bit backwards, but trust me, this works. So now we get into some of the fun stuff with step 5, which is determining your pricing. Now, I can't stress enough how important it is to be aggressive with your pricing from the very beginning. I understand that you want to make sure that you're making as much profit as you possibly can within that first month, but what you don't want is to leave your place open during those first few weeks that Airbnb is sending you traffic, because you're not going to be able to get that traffic back. You should be being really aggressive with your pricing. And that starts with looking at what are the prices that your competitors are booking at. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go on to Airbnb, you're gonna check out the pricing of your competitors, and you are going to undercut. Yes, you need to be aggressive, and yes, you won't make as much money, but honestly, within that first month, I suggest that you almost be so aggressive that you are barely a little bit over from breaking even. What that's gonna mean is you're gonna have a high occupancy rate, you're gonna make sure that Airbnb prioritizes your listing, you're gonna get ranked a lot higher, and in the future, that's going to help you much more than starting with a high price and then slowly backing off, and Airbnb isn't sending you as much traffic. All right, let's move on to number 6, which is taking advantage of easy bookings. And what I mean by easy bookings, Airbnb is going to offer you the option to give 20% discounts to your first 3 guests. So it is pretty steep, but what it does is it gets people in the door, which is also why you wanna make sure that your availability is really only within those first 4 to 5 weeks, so that you can make sure that those guests who are getting that discount are staying very soon so they can leave those 5-star reviews. The other piece of this is with easy bookings, you can also think about how can I make sure that my property is as open to everyone as possible. And one of the ways that you can do that is to turn on instant bookings for these first few weeks. I know this sounds a little bit risky, but depending on the property, this can work really well. So let's move on to step number 7, which is my personal favorite, which is spoiling your guests. Those first few guests that are helping you to launch your Airbnb should be the focus of all of your attention. Make sure that you're doing something to add to their experience. Whatever you have to do within your power to get those 5-star reviews, you do it, because with those first 5 to 10 reviews that you get, you need to make sure that those are 5-star reviews. Those first 5 to 10 reviews are absolutely essential in making sure that you can convert guests down the road. Really, if you have less than 10 reviews, people don't look at your property the same way as if you have more than 10 reviews. And if those 10 reviews from the very beginning are 5 stars, that is going to make it that much more easier for future guests to book your place. And this kind of leads into step number 8, which is following up with your guests. Those reviews are essential, so make sure that you continue to follow up with your guests so that it is an easy transition for them to check out and then leave you a review. Get almost every single guest to leave you a review. Obviously, don't be annoying, but make sure that they know exactly how important those first reviews are for you, because they're going to give those to you if you approach it in the correct way. So let's move on to step number 9, which is slowly transitioning out of your launch period. Now, this transition happens in a couple of different ways. Number 1, you're gonna be thinking about your pricing. What you don't want to do is go from $100 a night to all of a sudden start charging $150 per night. Your guests aren't going to like that. Airbnb isn't going to like that. What you should do is you should slowly increase your pricing as you start to get a feel for how much it is that your guests are actually going to pay to book your place. Now, that might take a little bit of experimentation, but I think that it's really good for you to at least get a baseline. The other thing that you should think about is as you get more in tune with your pricing and where your pricing should be, that's when you should switch over to a pricing optimization software such as PriceLabs, AirDNA, or others, where they will automatically start to fine-tune that pricing for you. And what that's going to do is those softwares are gonna find those little hidden areas or little pieces of the week or the month or the season where you can squeeze a little bit more profit out of your guests than you would normally be able to just by trying to analyze it all on your own. Now, if you follow these rules step by step, you are going to have a successful launch. Now, there's a lot of other small little steps that I didn't get to in this video, but if you'd like to talk about some of those, feel free to reach out to me as well. And the best way to get in contact with me is through the email that's posted in the description, which is ajhustlesyt@gmail.com. Feel free to let me know. We can jump on a call, we can talk about it, whatever works for you. Again, thank you so much for checking this video out. If any of this was helpful, feel free to smash that like button for me for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You guys are awesome. Again, I'm trying to be as transparent as possible with these videos, so I really hope that you appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching, and here's another video I think you're gonna like.